On the 10th of May, 1889, the SS Augusta Victoria began its maiden voyage. It was the first ship of a trio of ocean liners operated by the Hamburg America Line. This was the first ocean liner constructed on continental Europe that had twin screws, and the vessel was capable of a staggering 19 knots. The three vessels would outdo everything the Norddeutscher Line operated at the given time, and so they decided to pour resources into a special ship that would outdo all three of the Augusta Victorias in one foul swoop. Norddeutscher would turn towards the Vulcan Iron Works itself, as there was a specific naval engineer present that they wanted to consult about redesigning the common setup of the ocean liner, and this was Robert Zimmermann. Zimmermann would study engineering at Berlin University, then he would go to Britain, where he would serve in 3 separate shipyards, with the most important one being Barrow and Furness at the northwest coast of England, where he would serve as chief naval architect under William John. William John was a well-known naval engineer himself, and Zimmermann would take advantage of his position underneath John to learn as much about British shipbuilding as possible before returning to Germany. Once back in Germany, he would enter the Germania Yard at Danzig before he moved to Vulcan. When Norddeutscher turned to Vulcan, at the time it had 62 acres of land under its name, and it had 7 slipways, with the largest slipway capable of holding a ship up to 700 feet long, which a ship of that size had never been constructed in Germany. Unfortunately for Norddeutscher, their troubles were not over. Cunard was fast at work, and in 1893 they debuted their new class of ocean liners, the Campania and Lucania. These 2 vessels would be the fastest ocean liners the world had seen at that point, and they were regarded as the most luxurious. Suddenly, Norddeutscher now had to outdo 2 separate shipping companies from 2 separate nations. This is where Zimmermann's experience in both Germany and Britain come to hand, as he was capable of outdoing both classes of ship in one swoop, without hesitation. Speed was obviously one of the top focuses of the design, as the 2 other ships were capable of 22 knots. So, Zimmermann decided to install 2 4-cylinder triple expansion engines that could produce 28,000 shaft horsepower. Now this was 3,000 shaft horsepower short of the Campania, but the hydrodynamics of the hull would be altered in order to get the most efficiency out of the hull without increasing engine power. Campania's overall length was 622 feet, with a beam of 65 feet. This was a 9.5 to 1 ratio. The new German liner would be 649 feet long and 66 feet at its widest. This was a 9.8 to 1 ratio. 10 to 1 was regarded as the most efficient hull form available for ocean liners at the time period. This would give the ship an operational speed of 22.5 knots, which was half a knot faster than the Cunard liners. Now, having great speed came with a great downside, and this was noted in the previous speedsters, namely the fact that the high-power engines would vibrate the structure of the ship at the stern and make certain locations of the hull uncomfortable to reside in for passengers. Zimmermann would address this issue by applying the 1894 Otto-Schlick formula. This is often said to be Schlick's system. However, system is a misleading word, as Schlick had only come up with a formula that allowed a level of flexibility in the hull plates and framework to disperse the effect of engine vibrations. This was the first time Schlick's formula would be applied to an ocean liner capable of more than 20 knots. Speed is a great thing. However, it's not the whole purpose of the ship's design, as though it's excellent for business purposes, you also want to make sure that the paying passengers have a comfortable voyage, and this meant that the accommodations also needed addressing, and Norddeutscher wanted to completely rework the arrangement of the ship to maximize its efficiency and sense for those on board. The new ship would possess a total of 6 decks: the sun deck, promenade deck, upper deck, main deck, lower deck, and orlop deck. So, having a dimensionally larger ship in every respect meant that rearranging it, and then also repurposing certain spaces, was completely possible. The first issue to address was the placement of cabins and crew spaces, as on previous German ocean liners, there was no real method of organization, and this meant that cabins could be located in a completely opposite area of the ship from where passengers or crew needed to be. The new arrangement for first-class cabins would mainly see them confined on the upper deck, which in the past had been a passageway for crew members. Crew members would now have their spaces located in the vicinity of whatever their job was. So, if you were a cook, you were near the galley. If you were an engineer, you were near the engine rooms. They were not spread throughout the ship, and this meant that the crew no longer needed to access the upper deck. First class would completely occupy the amidships. Second class would occupy the stern, and third class would occupy the bow. And of course, crew was spread out depending on where their job was located. It was also decided that for first class, the dining room would be a centerpiece of the ship. It would span 4 decks amidships, and this meant that the uptake system for the funnels had to be separated, which worked out because the coal bunkers were placed directly below the dining saloon. Having 2 enormous coal bunkers located between the boiler rooms meant that the space between the boiler rooms had to be increased, and this gave the ship a distinctive clustering of its funnels. The ship had a total of 4 funnels in 2 sets of 2. There is this strange myth that popped up that the ship had 2 uptakes that split up into 2 separate sections each, creating the 4-funnel look. This meant that the ship theoretically could actually have 2 funnels and get away with it. However, there is no evidence to support this, and if you look at any plan of the ship, there are 4 sets of uptakes. With the impressive section of first-class public spaces located between the second and third funnel uptakes, the other first-class public spaces were spread out amongst the promenade deck. The promenade deck also housed the first-class suites, which consisted of a sitting room, a bedroom that housed a full-size bed, a private bathroom, and some private promenade space. The advantage of having the first-class cabins and suites on the promenade and upper decks was that in the event that weather got poor, they could still open their windows and portholes without having the major threat of waves crashing through their windows and dampening their accommodation. Now, second class and third class, which was really still steerage, had the standard accommodation that was available at the time period. Second class had their standard enclosed berths and large open public spaces. On the other hand, steerage was confined to large open spaces where basically everybody slept in one massive room. With the arrangement having been settled on, Robert Zimmerman would pass the architecture off to Johannes Pape. The architecture was of the standard Victorian style, just increased in its lavish nature, and there would also be large amounts of German symbolism placed throughout the ship, with paintings of important figures placed in large public spaces, or German pride symbols like the national eagle being placed around the ship. During this time, it was also decided to divide the first-class dining saloon into 5 separate spaces. You had the primary central space, and then the 4 corners would be closed off for parties of 24, and each of the 4 corners was of a different decorative style. Some of the most relevant styles you would see throughout the ship were of the Italian Renaissance, Rococo style, or the Queen Anne style. With the design having been finalized, the order for construction was given to the Vulcan Iron Works, and the date of the keel being laid down seems to have been lost. The ship's hull was launched on the 4th of May, 1897. It was completed in early September of 1897, and it would start its maiden voyage on the 19th of September the same year. The now named Kaiser Wilhelm Der Grosse had crushed the competition overnight, and became what was known as a superliner, the first ocean liner in history to possess this title. Kaiser Wilhelm Der Grosse had made all in-service ocean liners obsolete overnight, and it had even surpassed ocean liners that were under construction and had yet to debut. This prompted an immediate reaction from Hamburg, America, as now they needed to surpass Norddeutscher once again, and they would run to Robert Zimmerman. However, that is a story for another day. So, if you have learned something new in this video, why not leave a like and a comment down below, and have a wonderful day.